name is Selena Middleton. I am the founder of Stelliform Press and its publisher and editor-in-chief. Stelliform is a small press focusing on climate fiction and environmental stories. And because I think it's important, and because of the deep connections between the climate crisis and the theft of Indigenous lands, I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. So working to reform Western culture's relationship to the environment demands that settlers acknowledge that we are uninvited guests on the land. As settlers, we must shape our behavior with that knowledge and recognize that Indigenous peoples have a vast knowledge of these lands that is experiential in a way that our experience of the land is generally not. We must recognize that what's learned through tens of thousands of years or more of relationship is both scientific and spiritual. And then we have to go beyond that recognition and acknowledgement. So I'm a settler and I live and run Stelliform Press on the traditional territories shared between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Anishinaabe Nations, which is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Agreement. The wampum uses the symbols of a dish to represent the territory and one spoon to represent that the people should share the resources of the land and take only what they need. So this is an ethic that we need now and in the future. And the first step towards that future is abiding by the treaties and agreements that settler nations made with Indigenous nations. We must also consider how we can extend the spirit of those agreements and relationships into other parts of our lives and act on those considerations. So I encourage everyone present to get to know your treaties if you're on treaty lands, and seek out your local Indigenous and Black-led environmental justice movements and support them in any way that you can. Following the Land Back hashtag on social media can be a great way to learn about the many Indigenous-led actions across the globe. And in preparing for this launch and talking to Rae, I learned about the Oceans Back hashtag, which is a relatively new movement giving fresh inspiration to people of Indigenous ocean cultures around the world. And when searching this hashtag, I came across a speech given at COP26 by India Logan Riley, who is a Maori youth from Aotearoa, or I always say that word wrong, Aotearoa, or New Zealand, known colonially as New Zealand. And I would like to share just a tiny bit of that speech. So she says, climate change is the final outcome of the colonial project. And in our response, we must be decolonial, rooted in justice and care for communities like mine who have borne the burden of the global North's greed for far too long. I cannot put it more simply than that we know what we are doing, and if you aren't willing to back us or let us lead, then you're complicit in the death and destruction that is happening across the globe. And last but not least, Land Back, Oceans Back. This is all part of following Indigenous leadership. This is what is keeping warming below 1.5. This is what keeping warming below 1.5 degrees looks like. This is an invitation to you, learn our histories, learn our stories, honor our knowledge, and get in line or get out of the way. I thought that was so powerful and inspirational, and I hope that you do go and check out the rest of that speech. So moving on, I'd like to introduce our author of the hour and also our interviewer. So our last launch was very international, and today, again, we're gathered online from so many places all over the world. So first, I'll introduce Rae Mariz and our interviewer, Maria Haskins, and let them say hi to everyone, and then we'll have a reading from Weird Fishes. So Rae Mariz is a Portuguese-Hawaiian speculative fiction storyteller and cultural critic who currently lives in Sweden. Her writing inhabits the ecotone between science fiction and fantasy and features characters finding family with others who live in the gaps between. She's the author of The Unidentified from Balzer and Bray and co-founder of Toxoplasma Press. And you can find her work at raemariz.com and on Twitter at Rae Mariz. I'll just let you say hi, Rae.
Yeah, hi, that's me. Thank you for the introduction.
You made it. We're here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I will introduce Maria Haskins, who will be leading the interview portion of the launch. So Maria Haskins is a Swedish-Canadian writer and reviewer of speculative fiction. Her work has appeared in Black Static, Fireside Shimmer, Cast of Wonders, Mythic Delirium, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Flash Fiction Online, and elsewhere. She also writes a quarterly short fiction roundup for Strange Horizons. Her short story collection, Six Dreams About the Train, came out from Trepidatio Publishing in 2021. And Haskins was born and grew up in Sweden, but is now located just outside Vancouver with 2 kids, a husband, a snake, several noisy birds, and a very large black dog. Thank you for being here, Maria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this, both the story and this interview.
We're really excited to have you. Okay, so let's get started and hear a little excerpt from the book we're all here for today. The novella we're celebrating has been, for me, an absolute privilege to work on as an editor. And being in conversation with Rae, as we've discussed the book's fine details, its rhythm and diction, it's clear to me, it was clear to me very early on in the process that I was in conversation with someone who not only chooses her words very carefully, but also weaves those words to affect the reader on so many different levels simultaneously. I felt myself affected by it as I read it over and over again. Like, reading it makes a space inside you for wondrous things to grow. And on the surface, this is an undersea adventure, but it's also a kind of multi-layered tapestry. It's fun, it's cheeky, it's bewildering in the best of ways, but also sharp as glass when it comes to its critique of past and ongoing colonial aggression and its effects on the oceans and its creatures. So Weird Fishes is an underwater tale of friendship against monstrous odds. When Ceph, a squid-like scientist, discovers proof of the ocean's slowing currents, she makes the dangerous ascent from her deep-sea civilization to the uncharted surface above. Out of her depths and helpless in her symbiotic mech suit, Ceph relies on Iliokai, a seal folk storyteller who sings the state of the sea and has seen evidence of clogged currents as she surfs the time gyres throughout the lonely blue. Navigating the perils of their damaged ocean environment and seemingly insurmountable cultural differences, Ceph and Iliokai realize that the activities of terrestrial beings are slowing the spiraling currents of time. On a journey that connects future and past, the surface and the deep, the unlikely friends struggle to solve a problem so big it needs a leviathan solution. And Rae, I will pass the digital stage on to you.
Oh my God, thank you so much for that introduction. Like, my heart's beating really fast. I feel like I have a terrible time talking about this book, like explaining it or what I want people to know about it. And so I'm just extremely grateful that you did it. That was beautiful. Thank you. But
You're welcome.
As you promised, I am going to read an excerpt from said book, Weird Fishes. And I'm going to share the scenes where the 2 main characters meet for the first time, Ceph and Iliokai. And I'm going to give a super brief setup, I hope. We've already met Ceph in the deep sea, and we learned that her kind doesn't believe that there's life beyond their cities on the seafloor. But she saw something down there that kind of freaked her out, kind of like a UFO from above. So she, with her scientific curiosity, constructed a way to ascend to the surface to check things out. And at this point, we've also met Iliokai up on the surface. And she looks like a seal, but has features that are very not seal. And at this point, she noticed something that looked like a piece of trash floating on the surface. And when she got closer to investigate, She saw something was inside it that signaled for help. And also, I don't know, it is kind of important to know. Ceph communicates through colors and patterns on her skin. And on the page, that's rendered in italics. So you kind of get a visual clue at the mode she's communicating in. I hope it comes across in my reading, but just a little warning. Okay, you have to breathe like that before diving in and reading. At least I do. So here we go. Ceph was horrified by the creature she'd encountered at the surface. I'm sorry, it's also in Ceph's perspective, the beginning. Ceph was horrified by the creature she'd encountered at the surface. She'd never in all her depth seen anything like it. It was hideous. It had a face, 2 large, round, dark eyes fringed by a kind of spindly anemone, positioned in the front, side by side. How could it even detect anything in its surroundings? Ceph was disoriented to see herself somehow trapped inside the orb of the creature's eyes. At least she recognized the image as herself crammed inside the siphonophore suit after she flashed a distress call and read her own cry for help in the reflection. Ceph was unprepared to see the creature's brown-gray skin respond in its own crude chromatophores. What are you? Ceph seized up in a kind of panic attack, her 3 hearts fluttering out of sync, despite constructing the translucent organic mech suit and to protect her from the lack of pressure. It didn't seem to be squeezing her tight enough. She still felt as if she were dissipating with the lightness of her discovery, dizzy with the realization that she had done it. She was above and couldn't stop convulsing. Oh, crabs, hold on, the creature vocalized. Avoiding the man-of-war stings the best they could, they used their overlong paw fins to submerge Ceph and her protective suit back into the water. Ceph could taste the anxious chemicals the creature was releasing, and the creature's concern for her well-being calmed her somehow. Or maybe it was the increased pressure as they left the surface. Ceph was able to regulate her breathing again and steady herself as they approached the twilight zone. She noticed the creature's skin was still patterned with, "What are you? What are you? What the krill are you? What the krill are you?" Ceph parrot-fished back. The creature snorted in amusement. "Iliokai, sea dog, a whale rider. I'm a whale rider." Ceph's skin rainbowed in surprise. "Whale rider." The sea dog bared its teeth, but the body language didn't read as threat display. "You can understand my sonar then?" Iliokai asked, trying to establish common depths. Ceph flashed a yes. "And you can understand my patterns?" "Yes," the whale rider's skin responded, though not confidently. "This is incredible." Ceph flickered with excitement, oscillating in hues so nuanced only native speakers would be able to perceive them. "I'm the first denizen of the deep to reach the surface and interact with surface life forms. They told me it couldn't be done. No one believed I could alter my body chemistry to persuade medusoid and polypoid zooids to accept me into their colonial organism, to serve as a specially purposed siphonophore, a protective shell, to keep my fragile body intact without the steadying force of deep sea pressure." The patterns on Iliokai's skin had been attempting various formations to indicate, "Wait, wait, wait." Then she barked out, "Wait, slow down, I don't understand. You're a denizen of the deep?" She patterned her skin along with the vocalization for emphasis. "Yes," Ceph sparked impatiently. She hadn't anticipated that it would be this hard to communicate with a whale rider. Iliokai just burst out deep bubbles of laughter. Iliokai had heard songs, krill, she'd sung them herself, of creatures out of their depths. It was the basis of dramatic composition, and Iliokai had been known to chase a story past her own comfort climbs a time or two. But never had she heard of a denizen of the deep ascending to the surface. Iliokai peered at what had been belched up from the depths and had to admit disappointment. Denizens of the deep were supposed to be like super elegant, hyper-intelligent, untouchable gods. This creature, encapsulated in a siphonophore suit, drifting like plastic and gawking at filtered sunbeams, Well, let's just say Iliokai didn't think this was the stuff her folk sang epic sagas about. Iliokai scanned the murky expanse. The bottlenoses had moved on. All the predators had dispersed. The brief moment of communion was over, and the ocean had returned to the vast and lonely expanse Iliokai knew it to be. She was alone here with this makeshift jellyfish. You made me miss my ride, Iliokai patterned. She had been looking forward to migrating with the humpbacks. Maybe she could catch up to them. The creature from the deep bobbed awkwardly. It didn't have much that could be called a face, but Iliokai saw one of its eyes trained on the patterns of light filtering down from the surface, dilating with unmistakable wonder. You got a name? Iliokai asked it. Ceph, the creature patterned, attention still on the faint play of light through the water. She was drifting slightly with the current, didn't look like she could navigate too well. Iliokai sighed, exhaled a sigh of bubbles through her blowhole, and admitted herself trapped. Such a simple net, she hummed. Kindness is a lure, one I might regret. Iliokai, like all whale riders, shared a common ancestor with marine mammals. Altruism was in her genetic makeup, but that didn't keep her from feeling like a sucker. Hey, she said, as she swam above Ceph, blocking the view of the plays of polarized light. Do you need help getting back to your depths? Ceph focused again on the whale rider, then realized she'd been drifting. No. Collecting herself, she urged the man-of-war suit to fight against the tides. I came to the surface for a reason. I have work to do. I'm a scientist. Iliokai swam lazy circles around the scientist in her gelatinous shell. Okay. The circles were causing a slight gyre that spun Ceph on an awkward axis. Because it looks like you need help. Excuse me, I am the ancient intelligence, Ceph flared. Iliokai couldn't decipher the patterns precisely. She assumed it was the name the denizens of the deep called themselves. Impervious to all dangers of the deep. Sure, but you're not in the deep. Iliokai stopped swimming when she noticed how much difficulty her wake was causing. What are you even doing up here? Ceph formed her pattern slowly. Of course, her skin deployed and reordered pigment immediately, at the speed of her thoughts usually, so comparatively slowly. It took her some time to work out how to think about what exactly compelled her to make this ascent. She formed an image of the inorganic hunter in her minds, recalled the words from the whale rider song onto her skin. The taste of those words seeped into the water around her. The toxins and stink. Iliokai interpreted the words of the whale rider song, felt the blood metal taste in the water. Her clamped tight nostrils still tingled with the methane reek. Oh, Iliokai exclaimed. She bubbled laughter. I saw that too. That is from above. You're describing a research vessel, like your shell. She gestured to Ceph's siphonophore suit. They make them so they can travel to the depths where they'd otherwise choke and implode. Questions patterned Ceph's flesh. Iliokai couldn't decipher them at the speed and vibrancy at which Ceph was flashing them, until the patterns resolved into a single inquiry. What are they? They call themselves people, descendants of terrestrial mammals living on the other side of the liquid-air interface. Ceph's weird pupils dilated inside her translucent shell. Are you telling me terrestrial life exists? Yeah. Iliokai blinked her big sea dog eyes. Didn't you know? No, I mean, I guess some scholars postulated that it was theoretically possible. What? Ceph forgot she had to keep her patterns rudimentary. I can't believe it. I've discovered the existence of life in the above. Her skin blushed with self-satisfied pinks. I'll have to prepare a presentation to the council deep. Imagine the zooids of her suit responsible for locomotion were locomoting again, turning her away from Iliokai's incredulous glares. No one has ever made such a discovery. Life on the other side. Crabs, they'll probably sing songs about me. You're one lucky sea dog, Iliokai. Think of the opportunity this gives you to. Iliokai darted around to face Ceph, aggressive as a leopard seal. Are all denizens of the deep as delusional as you? She growled. You didn't discover anything. Literally every creature in the seas and shallows knows about them. Her skin patterned to emphasize her irritation. Have you had your head stuck in a thermal vent all this time, or what? I think we can stop there, but we can keep going. No.
Thank you, Rae. That was so fun. We'll just head right into the interview and ask you some questions about this book. So
as long as I don't have to say siphonophore suit again.
Yeah, hopefully not, but you might have to. So I'll pass the stage over to Maria, and I just wanted to let everyone know that you can ask questions at any time during the interview. Just put them in the chat, and also there'll be a bit of time at the end. All right, Maria.
Hi, everyone. So I'm the interviewer for today, and I think after hearing Rae read, you can understand that I'm really excited to be talking to her about this book because it's a really special kind of story that is really different. I mean, and my first question to Rae is that in the acknowledgements for Weird Fishes, you mentioned that the inspiration, the dreaded "where do you get your ideas" question, that the inspiration for the story came when you were watching a documentary, an Attenborough documentary. Can you tell us a little bit about that? The original idea for this?
Sure. It was the Blue Planet 2 David Attenborough documentary, and they had a episode called The Deep or something like that. And so they're like panning through the dark water. David Attenborough's voice is talking about how how unknown the deep sea of the planet Earth is, like that we know more about the space than we do about the sea, and like more people have been on the moon than as deep as they were going right now. They might not have said that. I might be making that part up. Something like that. I've heard that. So I was in it. We were going there, and they had a sequence showing the vessel that the scientists were in, just like cresting over a ridge in the dark with their bright lights. And like immediately I was thinking, like, what are these creatures? How are they perceiving this? Like, he's talking about like creatures that we've never seen before. They haven't seen anything like this before. Like, what will their friends say? like would they believe? Like, what's going on? So just like with that that question, it kind of just like chain reacted a bunch of ideas of like what like how do like what that perspective of it must seem like aliens, like it would be like an alien UFO appearing in the sky, and we have like stories, lots of stories about how we would react to that to that happening. Like how would those creatures react? And so that was the basis that just like fired off all the neurons, everything got in line. And it's a really, like, I do like Attenborough documentaries. There's like a lot of artistry in like the cinematography and just like the technical. So it was a treat to be down in the water through this documentary medium. And yeah.
It's so great too, because that scene is really good in the story as well, because you almost write it from the other point of view there when Ceph actually sees this, her first human interaction. So
and I don't know if this is a spoiler. I hope it's not a spoiler, but they're also like deep sea films where you can hear the marine scientists like, oh, look at this, look what we've got here.
Yeah.
And there is one where they're just like, wow, dude, look at this octopus, she's huge. And so it's fun to like get like that view of like how we're like, oh, so weird. And then to read in the book, Ceph's like, oh my gosh, what is this? can I communicate with it?
I know,
I'm terrified.
That was one of the things I really loved about this book, that switch in perspective where it's like Ceph is like this, wow, I can't believe I found this life form. And meanwhile, that's like the people that are down there looking at Ceph going, oh my God, I can't believe I found this life form.
Everyone
So
just pointing at each other.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And now another thing that I really love about Weird Fishes is that obviously it's speculative fiction, but it blends like science fiction and fantasy together in this really cool way. And I love when writers do that, like very clearly, which you do in the story. And because I think that sometimes there's a bit too much worry in genre fiction about like, is this science fiction or is it fantasy? Or like, I don't write science fiction, I only write fantasy. And like, people try to really divide these up. And there's a bit of a worry, I think, both from writers and the publishing industry, maybe sometimes, about sort of having some kind of clear delineation between that. Do you think about genre when you write? Like, do you mix them on purpose, or is it just that, the story goes where it wants? I'm really interested about it because I love how you do it.
I don't do it on purpose. I would like to make it easier for myself. Like with this one, I was like, it's clearly science fiction. Just like it's a first contact story. These are the beats of a first contact story. I don't know if you don't know it. First contact story is either humans going off into space, meeting an alien culture, discovering that there's life in the universe, and like, what does that mean? What does that mean to not be alone in the universe? And then the flip side of it is like when an intelligent life form out there comes to Earth, and then that's like usually an alien invasion kind of story, and that has its own kind of arc. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna plug and play this. This seems good. But there were a lot of things baked into that genre that I didn't want to repeat, that I didn't think were just not a story I was interested in telling, like that like this us versus them thing, and also just a lot of things. So by trying to sidestep a lot of the things, it just spiraled off into something else completely. And I have been more concerned about genre recently. Like I think before I was kind of like a little more hostile or irreverent to that idea, like it has to fit in, and like felt like it was like that's only like a crass marketing thing. This is the story, blah blah blah. But I have started to see how like having a clear genre is very helpful for the reader to know how to enter the story or know what to expect. And so I've been trying to find my genre, like try to be more specific instead of I don't know, I like to say that I write speculative fiction. I like to say I write science fiction, and everyone is like, yes, you do. But I think some things in the genre are expected, and like when someone who's really into the genre picks up a book, they expect those things, and so there's like a kind of disappointment. Like I want to set up the right reader expectation before like twisting them a little bit. So I don't know, I have it as a concern, but it's not something I feel like I can do anything about at this point. It's going to be a little twisty. Like it's not going to be.
Sometimes the story goes where it wants. Like, I mean, the clearest, I would say, the fantasy element of this is really Iliokai, who is like such an awesome take on the whole mermaid siren, like that whole mythology. And how did you go about creating her? Because I find her really fascinating. The whale riders in general, like how they describe the whole story.
No, but that one I also felt like was based in reality, like the mermaid look, or that idea of sailors seeing manatees and mistaking them for mermaids. And so I was like, okay, well, what if they are really marine mammals? So they actually saw a real mermaid but mistook that for a manatee. Like these kinds of things
Yeah.
I think are fun. And so that was like the first thought of Iliokai, was she's going to be a marine mammal. And it's interesting that there are so many different kinds of stories, many kinds of like creatures, selkies, and
Yeah.
it seems like every seafaring culture has stories about these creatures. And some of them there are like some overlaps. So it was fun to twist those, and also think about that these are stories told by people, like about this creature. So what could they be misunderstanding about this feature, about like
Yeah.
shape shifting, or about like mermaid songs, or their intents? Are they dangerous? Do they want to drown you?
Yeah.
Kinds of
Because
things.
even in the story, even Ceph has some real misconceptions about whale
Totally.
riders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting too. Like, and there's a little aside I know in the story where you mentioned, it's almost like the tale of the Little Mermaid is sort of mentioned in passing, and Iliokai's like, oh my god, like
Yeah.
that whole thing.
No, the stories like spread. Like I thought that was kind of fun too, that human stories did make it like in the oceans, like on the
No,
from the
it's a
shores
great
into the
feature. It's a really good feature. Like I really, in the story, like I love odd couple pairings and stories in general. And this
Me
is
too.
it's such a great, I mean, even from the passage that you read earlier, it comes out right away in their first meeting, this whole great energy that they have together with who is this like very confident scientist and thinks she knows everything. And Iliokai, who comes from a completely different background and is a completely different creature. So it's just like it's such a great part of the story. How did you, when you were thinking about making this odd couple pairing, what kind of thoughts did you put into it? Because it goes deeper than just them being from different communities. They're also communicating differently, just like you express in that part of the story that you read.
Yeah, I think like one of the initial things I was thinking about was I wanted Ceph to come from a kind of familiar culture, or like, I don't know, this is where I have like a hard time explaining the thing that's already like on the page.
It's there.
Like, yeah. That no, I was thinking more about Ceph's perspective, like a very like isolated, like focused. She's focused on her career, she's focused on her family, like she kind of has these like blinders on, like this is the world she knows. She's like top dog in this world. That she wouldn't use top dog because that is a very terrestrial kind of metaphor, but you know, she's up there. And contrast that with Iliokai's perspective, who has seen a lot and understands a lot and has like a wider circle of compassion. I don't know if
No, and she's more irreverent also. Like she doesn't have this kind of, because Ceph comes from a kind of very structured environment, like whereas Iliokai has just been like basically raising herself
yes,
in the ocean. So I love that.
Yeah, so that's like, I mean, they have their physical differences, but a lot of the odd couple-y things comes from, this is the experience of like viewing the world like this. And Iliokai is just like an open anemone nerve. Like she's been like pelted by a lot of emotions, like brewing in the ocean.
They're such a great pair. Like they're two great characters, and just like I find together, they're so much fun to see like how they both sort of are dealing with the main quest that then comes into the story, like how to solve this problem that they both have sort of experienced from different sides. Now, another thing about Iliokai, I'm fascinated by her as a storyteller too, because there are, like Ceph has heard about whale riders. She knows about whale riders and that they tell stories. And when she talks to Iliokai about this, I think Ceph has this sort of notion that the whalers are making up the stories, that it's a
Mhm.
very, it's sort of a, almost like a technical process where you make up the story. And when Iliokai talks about this or thinks about this, it's like, it's not quite like that, like how the storytelling part of For the Whale Rider, how that works. And there's this quote I'm going to read from the story because I just love it so much. It says, "A sea song was born of an intense emotion, an unimaginable trauma or an overwhelming joy that unhinged a jaw and allowed release through the body." Like, I just love this description of how the stories are, what the stories are for Iliokai. And I'm just thinking, is this sort of like, because this is also the writing community, do you
Mhm.
make your story, do you construct it, or do you sort of just like find it and tell it? Like, what are your thoughts on that? How does
Yeah,
it mirror
well,
your own?
I'm happy you picked up on the Iliokai thing, because that was an element that I found fascinating. That wasn't in the outline, but this was how she worked. It was also kind of like a, you know, you get in the flow. I felt like I got in the flow like pretty easily with this story in kind of a way I hadn't experienced much before. Like experience it in like fits and bursts, but this one was just like flowing through the fingers. And so in the
Yeah.
middle of it's like kind of like, Iliokai girl, how are we doing this? Like what, like kind of like looking at that process while in the process, like, okay,
Yeah.
because this is coming together because I know I've read these things or I'm interested in this. And so her creative process is just like being open to the world and like filtering all those inputs into this otherworldly kind of song. And like part of me, I kind of hesitates to be like this mystical, it just came to me, like it just like
Yeah.
flowed.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what it is like for Iliokai, that it is a process happening.
Yeah.
It's not really an
Yeah. It's that
explainable,
too.
explicable process, but there is something going on there. And I don't know, it's like a mix of that,
Yeah.
having the idea, putting the pieces on the board and then letting the pieces, and like giving the rules and then letting the pieces go. And so much stuff in the story is a surprise to me. Like, like it's also like fun to hear what
It's awesome.
what,
It's also
what
when that
readers.
happens when you're writing, right? Like when it's
I
almost
know.
like, who even like, did I think this? Like, it's just
Yeah.
coming. And I love
And
that
there's
for
some things where I'm
Iliokai
like,
too.
oh, well, how did that get in there?
But like you say, it also comes from somewhere, even like for Iliokai, where it comes from her just traveling the oceans and listening to other creatures and sort of experiencing the world. It's not like it just comes out of nowhere,
Yeah.
which I think it's yeah, it was, I love Iliokai. What can I say? I
Yeah.
really, I would say that's another thing that comes out really well in the part that you were reading about how they communicate.
Mhm.
Like whole idea that it's not verbal communication. I love that. What was that like to write? Like that they're like, what was your process that you put that in there? Because I could see it being a bit of a challenge to like to sort of want to capture that.
I think because I'm such like a word-based person, like I have a very narrative way of thinking and processing stuff. And like the written word is the way that I best express things. And so I like thinking of language like stripped down from words. Like how would that be? Like there's sign language, there's other ways, like dance is a like communication that like no, it was just kind of exploring different ways that that things can be communicated. And Ceph's sea folk also have like a way that they can express like chemicals into the water, like their emotions. I also like to think of like hormones like being this like chemical thing. So they have this way of like picking up stuff from the water, like the discerning, and also kind of also involuntarily expressing like an emotion.
It affects other people. It even affects others' emotions. I love those parts of the story too. And you're so knowledgeable about it, because this is another thing I feel like this story. So yeah, science fiction, there's a little bit of fantasy, but there's also science, like actual science of how these creatures, or similar, maybe not exactly Ceph and Iliokai, but similar creatures live in the waters. Like it's just,
and that's funny. I don't have a science background. I just have a very like intense interest in like the natural world, and like when a fun fact like flutters by,
yeah,
you kind of like latch onto it and then half forget it, and so it gets a little bit more creative.
it works really well.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking about, that's also another part of the story, how humans, like you were talking about how this whole like, you know, verbal communication that we are so focused on, and like the human perspective of seeing these undersea creatures and thinking, wow, look at that. And in this story, like humans are not even, I mean, they're peripheral characters. You sort of see them. And also that because this is a story about climate change in a like, and very much, but just sort of ignoring us and ignoring the land-based perspective. And really, I love how it just goes in the ocean. Like, what does this look like for in the ocean for other creatures than us? And was this something that you really wanted to, because I feel like that is so strong in the story, like just forget the humans, like we're focusing, what would this look like from another angle?
Yeah, I mean, a part of that like original genre that I was interested in, like science fiction that has alien cultures, they also like tell something about what the writer or what we think about humanity then. Like if these people are like this, or this race of alien is like this, then that means we're like this. So yes, there are very, very few scenes where the human perspective is in the center, but a lot of those ideas are a little bit about how do humans relate to their planet and to difference, and like Ceph's culture in particular, like they're a very arrogant, self-centered kind of civilization. And I did have fun. like okay, it sounds ludicrous when they proclaim like we are the only intelligent creatures on the planet, when we're kind of like standing over here.
They are too.
I know. Like we're standing over here and like, is that really true? But then if you flip it, you're like, this is something we tell ourselves, like like humans have the rights to, like, we're the most evolved, we're like the top of the chain.
We're the intelligent ones, so we can
the intelligent ones, like no other creatures match our cognitive abilities. They don't have emotional capacity. Like this is just scientific fact, folks. And that's where I also wanted to be like,
is that true though? Yeah, maybe not. Yeah. No, I love that. Because like, it's like you say, it really brings out the, like that is brought out, like it, even though a story isn't like about humans, it's still about humans, obviously, since we're writing, in this case at least, for writing.
And I did want the story to be like about, just to think about like the human relationship with the climate, or with like the planet that I guess we're a we, right? I am periodically a human person, so yes, we that we also inhabit. So yeah, but I do think we need to tell stories from other perspectives, that we're just awash with literatures, but they're all like from this perspective, a human perspective, really focused on this narrative. Doesn't matter what the narrative is. It has
because that's, I mean, the story, it's like Weird Fishes. It's such a sort of like a rollicking undersea adventure on one hand, like, and this whole the odd couple dynamic with Iliokai and Ceph, and like It's very entertaining. It's really fun. But it's got this really serious edge, obviously, because it's about the very real problem of, climate change and what that's doing to the oceans and to the whole earth, really. So do you have any thoughts on that, on like the importance of fiction? I mean, I don't want to sound all like you're writing this preachy book about climate change, but more like what are your thoughts on that, the importance of fiction to like inform us and tell us stories that impact us in some way?
Yeah, no, I think there are things, at least for me, there are things I can get at in a story that I can't like sit you down and have a talk. Like there's just too many other variables, or like even the words, even if we have the same language, we're speaking English, like you say a word, you say climate change and the conversation is dead, or you say any of the C words, capitalism, colonialism, like there's like too much baked into it. No one wants to hear it. I mean, I want to hear it. These are things I'm very, very interested in talking about and like discussing and like really getting in, pulling apart and seeing what we're all talking about. So I see fiction as a way to explore those things. Like I do have like this like scientific thought experiment approach, like going into the stories I write. Like I have this nagging question, why is it like this? Like, why is this? I mean, part of the thing in Weird Fishes too is in the beginning, Ceph discovers something. She discovers the climate threat. And her first thought is, how do I tell everyone what this means? Like, I have this understanding of how serious this is because of all this particular knowledge. But how do I spread the word? And I think at this late stage, like the word has been spread, like information is not really the problem. But there's still like a disconnect, like an emotional disconnect to, or just like how to find a way in. Yeah. And I think like, I don't know. And I think it kind of became clear to me that a part of the problem is a little bit of lack of imagination. Like in like 2019 when Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Future demonstrations, like really early, I was there with my daughter, we were listening, and they were like, listen to the scientists, politicians, please do something. And me in my old age was just like, I don't think they know what to do. I think there's like no ideas there. And so that like kind of woke something in me where it was like, I got ideas. Like I've seen I can imagine at least 57 better worlds than we have right now. Like if we need ideas, then like let's tell some stories, let's help. And so like I do think of this particular story too as just like a warm-up, like warming up those imagination muscles, like the things we're gonna need to be better at using to address the thing.
Because I mean, it has like a happy ending. It's not necessarily an easy ending, I would say. Like it's not like one of those bing everything, but like it has, and I like that for a climate change story, especially to sort of, and I think that can also be enticing to some people when they're reading the story, that it's not like there is some hope there. That, even though, like I said, it's not an easy hope necessarily. Did you always know that it was going to end like that? I'm not going to spoil it, but like,
no, I know. And this is the thing, is like, I would love to talk about the ending. Please,
yes, I would
read the book so we can get nitty gritty into where we ended up at the end of the story.
I'm going to spoil it. It's very good.
Yeah, but I do really want to talk about it. And I don't know how to talk about it and be coy, but I think with that beginning genre of first contact. And that the thing that's interesting to me in that story is once we realize this thing, it shifts the perspective of who we are when we're not alone in the universe, kind of thing. So I wanted to get at that feeling, and I had some ideas of how to get there. Like not, there was a lot that came in the process of writing it, which is also
complex ending in a way. Like it's not, like I say, it's not, I don't want to give the impression, I don't want to spoil and say, oh, it's such a happy ending, like, but it's complex, but it's
good. I mean, it is, but I do like, I
sometimes feel like
I knew where I wanted this.
I
knew where I wanted the story to go. I didn't know exactly how we were going to get there. Was also very surprised when we got there, like what was waiting for us. But I did the chapter before the epilogue. That was pretty new. That was one that was written like after work with Selena, like getting to.
Okay.
And I remember like thinking about it, walking with my daughter to school and kind of playing it out, and getting to like the last line and kind of doing this weird sob thing. And my daughter was like, what's wrong? I was like, I just thought how I was gonna end, how that fish book is gonna end. And she just rolls her eyes like, all right.
But very rarely impressed with their parents.
I know. She was very old when she was like, what, you wrote a book? When? What do you think I do all day? So yeah, not so impressed.
The hardest people to impress in the world. Young kids. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up here. One last question. Are you writing more Ceph and Iliokai stories, do you think? Or are you the kind of writer that just you're going on to something else? Like,
no, I'm not with those characters, but I do like to take something from the world and like work on it with something else. So we didn't even mention this. Like, take a look at this super skinny book. There's so much stuff in here. We didn't mention it, but there is like the time gyres, that idea of time circulating in the oceans. So I have an idea of like a time travel seafaring ragtag crew, like traveling through time.
Write that, please write that.
It'll be a very Rae kind of story. I feel it in my bones, but it's also going to be one that's not going to flow through my fingertips. It's a very research intensive one. But I'm excited to free some brain space and sit with new things, new ideas. But thank you for your questions. I was really excited
I've been so excited to talk about this book since I read it. So thanks so much for bringing me on for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maria. Rae, is that seafaring story your Sweden connection to the ocean?
Actually, it's the Portuguese.
Oh.
We're going through Hawaii again, like where my Portuguese ancestors went through. So yes, but it's a lot of things.
Nice. Awesome. So we have come to the end of the launch, and I was thinking while you two were talking that we really should have like a post-launch for several Stelliform books where like people have read the book and you get to talk about the ending.
Yeah, I know.
Think about it. We'll think about it. Okay, so we have a little prize to give away as a thank you to those of you who came to support Rae in her new novella and also showed some love to a small press. So the winner of the prize will receive a copy of Haunani K. Trask's collection of essays From a Native Daughter, Colonialism and Sovereignty in Hawaii, which is a well-reasoned attack against the rampant abuse of Native Hawaiian rights, institutional racism, and gender discrimination, and in the manner of all decolonial writing, generated heated debates throughout the world.
A feel-good story.
Yeah, right. So, and the prize will also include a copy of Octavia Cade's The Impossible Resurrection of Grief, which, like Weird Fishes, but in a different way, is about the loss of species and its connection to colonial history and present day emotional health and resilience. So let's see, we've got 18 people here, at least 4 of them are people that can't receive prizes. So let's go with a number between 1 and 14, Rae.
Ooh, this is the question that's going to stump me now. Let's go with 8 for
8.
Seth's arms.
Ooh, good choice. So it looks like Mackenzie Green is the winner of the prize. So Mackenzie, if you can just check the chat for that query at Stelliform Press email and shoot me an email and we'll get that prize out to you. So it has been an absolute pleasure to spend this hour with all of you celebrating Weird Fishes and listening to the interview. I learned things even though I've read the book so many times and worked on it. Thank you, Maria, for a wonderful interview and for helping us to spread the word about the book. Everybody,
so happy to be here.
Everybody be sure to check out Maria's collection, 6 Dreams About the Train, and her reviews at Strange Horizons. Congratulations again, Rae, on the publication of your novella. That is, as I've liked to say a few times on social media, mind-bending and heart-mending. So, so for those of you who haven't read it, I wish you all the experience that I had with it, which was that I felt like it kind of very gently broke my brain and then very lovingly put it back together again in a slightly different configuration.
Yeah.
If you don't already have a copy, you can grab the link to the Stelliform bookstore in the chat and get a copy printed on recycled paper, or you can grab a digital copy at a discount. The book is also available to order from anywhere that you usually get books, so your favorite indie bookseller will be able to get it for you. Also, as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to Erin Julian for helping out today. And finally, thank you to everyone who has joined us and helped us to bring the book into the world. We will be hosting more launch celebrations in the fall. So if you'd like to keep in touch with Stelliform and stay informed about our new releases, be sure to sign up for Stelliform's newsletter and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our next title coming out is it's coming out in September, and it's our first Canadian book, and it is Rebecca Campbell's Arboreality, which looks like this.
Beautiful.
Very pretty. It is a mosaic novella set in flood and wildfire ravaged British Columbia, and somehow still manages to be both transformative and hopeful. So Rae, I would like the final words of the launch to be yours. So do you have any final thoughts for those who are here now or for anyone who might watch this later on YouTube?
Yes, mostly I just want to thank everyone for coming. Those that know me know I'm pretty hermit crabby, and this was a little bit outside of my comfort clines. So I really appreciate everyone being here. Selena, thank you so much for putting this together and for making the story available in a format, many formats, so it can be shared with people. I appreciate all your help throughout this whole process, and we are here to break your brains. Yes. Maria, it was great speaking with you. I hope we can continue conversations about speculative fiction and
yeah.
elsewhere. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, everybody. I will end the launch now and wish you all an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.